Hey everyone, how's it going? The name is Orange Knight XV, and welcome to my video where I bitch about the cameras in FNAF, an underwhelming mechanic and a pretty cool premise. So, I expect you guys to know what Five Nights at Freddy's is. Chuck E. Cheese rip-off robots are haunted by dead kids or sci-fi soul metal or something, and you work the night shift. They want to kill you with a robot suit saw trap because they think you're an endoskeleton, and you want that to not happen. Use the doors, lights, mask, and most importantly, the cameras to stay alive until 6 AM. Rinse and repeat for 5 nights in a row, and you win, right? Except, no, not really. You see, the problem is, despite the cameras being a part of the series' identity, you are playing as a security guard after all, they serve next to zero purpose in most of the games. They're barely used for more than a third of the threats in-game, at best, or their impact on the game itself is trivial. Usually some other mechanic has more importance in terms of actually keeping you alive, and the info that you get from cameras isn't even always necessary or is just straight up not worth it. So, let's complain about a mechanic in a franchise that freaks me the fuck out, that lost most of its good qualities to the fan games it inspired. Let us begin with the first game in the franchise, Five Nights at Freddy's 1. Simultaneously, this is the best and most underwhelming use of the cameras. The OG game has 4 threats: Freddy, Bonnie, Chica, and Foxy. 5 if you want to count Golden Freddy. I'm not talking about them in this video though, so you can keep them out of your mind. We're just going to talk about the core 4. All of them are prevented from killing you by the doors, not the cameras. The cameras do keep Freddy and Foxy from moving, but whether or not you die to them depends on if they get inside the office. FYI, getting in the office depends on the goddamn doors! I repeat, the doors are what determine your fate, not the cameras. Obviously, you can't use the doors all the time, and not using cameras leaves Foxy killing you to a gamble on timing, since you could accidentally open the door only for him to run straight into your room. Plus, he robs you of your power every time he knocks on the door, so you will black out if he keeps getting away with rushing you. But Foxy is the only threat that you technically need the cameras for, and that's just to keep him from rushing you. And the doors will still keep him from directly ending you if you're timing it correctly. You just want to make sure he doesn't rush you too many times. You still aren't going to want to use the cameras though because of Freddy, specifically the threat of running out of power. Since using cameras, like everything else in this game, takes up power, and using cameras while the doors are active is just going to drain your power more. Plus, frantically switching between cameras also drains your power a bit. The cameras are nice for tracking everyone, but you don't need to track everyone. Keeping the camera on the East Hall corner pretty much stunlocks Freddy unless you want to check on Foxy, in which case, again, the door decides your fate. Because Freddy can only get into the office if you're not looking at the East Hallway camera, and that depends on whether or not the door is open. Bonnie and Chica will just show up at your doorstep, so you don't need the cameras for them either. You just flick the lights, and if they're there, you close on them before they can break your door. And if you're pulling at the cameras constantly, Foxy isn't gonna matter because he's not gonna move. TLDR, treating the camera like a get off my dick button doesn't read to me as a good use of a mechanic where you play as a night guard. That being said, let's move on to FNAF 2. i.e., the game with a better loop than FNAF 1, but worse execution of mechanics. It is simultaneously my favorite game, and a game that I absolutely hate. The cameras are a glorified button press in this game. The problem with FNAF 2 isn't that I find it the scariest or most panic-inducing, which I do, it's that the cameras don't mean jack shit for 90% of the game's threats, and they are actively detrimental. Let me give you a quick pop quiz. Why do you open the cameras in FNAF 2 in the first place? Are you starting to see a problem here? The prize corner and the fucking marionette. The puppet will straight up kill you if you don't wind up the music box, and that can only be done with the cameras. So why isn't it just a button press or something? You know, like they do in FNAF VR. The first game at least had the illusion of seeking through the cameras in order to find where the animatronics are, but in 2, you have to go to the prize corner in order to keep that box from running out, or it's GG. On top of that, opening the cameras is an active threat to your safety because of every other fucking animatronic. Everyone else kills you if you go into the cameras. The cameras get forced down whenever you get attacked, the office characters are a reflex check, put the mask on immediately or you die, and Foxy and the vent characters just send you to Jesus instantly. Oh, and Toy Bonnie can do both, as if you didn't have enough problems already, because his blackout will force the music box timer to run down, because you can't interact with the cameras or anything while the blackout is active, which of course just means the puppet is going to kill you, especially on later nights. I like this game more than most in the franchise. Like I said, it's kind of my favorite, but the cameras being worthless, if not an active detriment, has always bugged me about this game. This is also coming from someone that doesn't outright despise the music box mechanic, even though I agree it is flawed as hell. It basically is the only reason that the cameras are used, and again, it screws with every other mechanic in the game, as if Foxy didn't already do that in the first place. Moving on, FNAF 3, the worst game in the original quadrilogy. I really hate this game. Springtrap is a cool villain, but the gameplay is more boring than the first game, especially the gameplay loop itself. The main problem with FNAF 3 for me is that the game isn't scary. Only one guy can kill you, so you get even desensitized faster from the phantom jump scares. The jump scares themselves are telegraphed to high heaven, and I really don't like the intense green of this game's color palette. Like, it's moody and adds the idea that everything is rusty and crusty, but I just don't like it. So, what about the cameras? Well, Scott made things worse. Springtrap likes to hide on most of the cameras in order to avoid being found by the player, but the camera monitor is much smaller in 3 than the other games in the franchise. The cameras themselves are also far grainier, so half the battle is figuring out where the fuck William is on the screen. Even then, you don't need to seek through the cameras if you can keep him on cam 10, where he can only move to cam 9 or the vent. So Freddy from FNAF 1 if you didn't have to leave cameras. Springtrap being the only lethal threat means there's nothing to keep you out of the cameras for an extended period of time that could end your night. Phantom BB is more of a minor nuisance, and vent errors just mean that he's going to start moving and you're gonna have to play Where's William again. Most of the other Phantom animatronics mean basically nothing. Foxy, as long as you're just checking slowly, you can just go back to opening the cameras and not care, and Freddy is going to be hard countered by the fact you're already on the cameras. I'd be more content with Springtrap's mechanics here if you had to use the cams to figure out his attack route and then block him accordingly. Kind of like FNAF 1 Freddy, but with more attack options. Except we can't do that because there are still no goddamn doors. And the camera still isn't quite the primary line of defense because that job is taken by the audio lure, which is the only thing that Afton actually follows. I'd be speaking differently if looking at Afton on cams actually pushed him back, but no, it's the sound of children. And unlike Springtrap, the cameras did not come back. What do I mean by this? Well, FNAF 4, the not-so-final chapter, took out the cameras. And basically every other game in the series past 4 doesn't use the cameras in the mainline gameplay. FNAF 4 is objectively the scariest game in the franchise really because it cheats and forces you to rely on Fate audio. But the rest of the games in the series Scott actually made from 4 onwards drop the use of cameras entirely. It's almost like Scott gave up on trying to make the cameras worth a damn after 3 failed attempts of trying to make them useful. Coupled with 3 not being particularly scary, he decided to take away all of our tech for the 4th game in favor of making us rely on our hearing. Only to get tinnitus when missing the 25 decibel lower audio cue that tells us about the goddamn rabbit at our doorstep. Then Sister Location happened and ruined the plot by making the series sci-fi horror instead of paranormal horror. More importantly, it split up the gameplay instead of it being focused on one central office to having different objectives every night, none of which require using cameras to any capacity. Yes, there's that hidden extra night against the Ennard in Night 5, but because that is an optional thing that you're not going to instantly know about, the main game does not use cameras. Maybe gave us back our office in the next game, but neglected the cameras in favor of motion detectors. Yeah, there's no cameras in Pizzeria Simulator. All you have is the motion detectors, the audio lure, and your silent ventilation. At the very least, I think the gameplay loop in 6 is pretty damn good, but again, no cameras. And then cameras and Security Breach feel kind of like an afterthought. Then again, so did the series timeline by the time that 4 rolled around. I kind of stopped caring about FNAF after playing Security Breach and not even beating it, and what little I tried of the Ruin DLC. I don't feel like talking about Ultimate Custom Night either, because that feels more like a bonus game than anything from mainline. It is a travesty, in my opinion, that the coolest aspect of the series, looking at animatronics that don't move when you're actively observing them, serves little to no purpose when you're trying to play the game properly, especially given how FNAF 1 handled the camera renders for the animatronics. Look at this shit. This stuff is taunting to me even a decade later, but the cameras proceed to do jack shit in mainline for the first 3 games, and then they're just gone for the rest of the series. Why? Was it just that difficult for Scott to just make an animatronic that just gets pushed back by looking at them on the cameras or something? I might like the freaking camera seeking mechanics in some of the fan games, but I understand that some people really don't like spam clicking through cameras just to find one guy. But at the very least, the cameras actually mean something there. Anyways, that's all I have for you on this video. Thanks for watching, subscribe, and all of that jazz. Usually I don't talk about horror games and stuff like that, but I want to vent about this dumb flaw I recognized in a horror series I hated, and then took interest in, and then went back to being confused by. Thank you and have a good day!